Hey everybody, we're Pole DFS. I'm Ricky.
I'm Keaton.
And we're going to talk to you about some more NASCAR today. We are in Phoenix.
Yeah,
Arizona. Well, kind of, sort of Phoenix. We'll talk about it in a minute.
All right.
It's like close-ish to Phoenix.
They're all right outside the metropolitan
They're
areas.
all right outside.
No one wants loud racing in their city.
I would, but it's fine. Anyways, nonetheless, week 5. Last week was something. We'll get to that in a moment. Housekeeping first. Weekly show beer. This is what some would call the OG Charlotte beer.
Yes.
It's a little bit
put Charlotte
blurry
beer
on
on the map. I know it's not the best. I'm trying to. No, that's
there
not.
it is.
Hot Drop and Roll
Yep,
from Noda Brewing.
Yep. It's definitely a good beer. One of the first craft beers I ever had, I'm pretty sure.
I think that's true. One of the first beers I ever gave Ricky when we first met.
That's 100% true. But also thank you to all the viewers. We've talked to a bunch of people on Twitter, on YouTube.
Yeah, it's been cool.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out. Keep reaching out.
Keep leaving those comments.
We need people to
Send
talk
us messages
to.
on Twitter.
Yeah, like us, subscribe us, share us to all of your friends.
We're watching before the race, during the race. Yeah.
Exactly. Tweet at us if you have any questions at Pin.
When you're doing
DFS.
lineups, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, any questions for lineups, questions during the race. Do you think this will get better, Ricky? That's normally what I'm thinking midway through the round or through the race. But yeah, anyways, so going into our last week recap, this is the Ricky review. So I have to first start off by apologizing to Eric Jones because the first 2 weeks of our show, I said,
mean things
yeah,
about
Eric Jones, his stats look great, but I just don't know how good his car is. I really like Eric Jones. I think he's a great driver. All of those things I said, and then he just came out on Sunday and finished 10th and just was in the optimal lineup and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So he is somebody to watch all year. I am very impressed by him. I mean, I was really impressed by him as a whole before, but jumping into a car that no one really expected to do that well and to be able to do that well is very, very impressive, but it also makes the picking someone in fantasy sports a little bit harder. I think we'll talk about it a little bit later. There seems to be a little bit more parity from 10th through 30th this year. I think, 30th through 38 or 30th through 40 or however many cars they have on any given week is still going to be very similar. It's going to be those same 8 to 10 cars that are,
don't have a chance.
They're going to probably finish 30th to 40th every week, and you don't want to roster them at all. But I think that the thing that we've noticed the first couple weeks on these intermediate tracks is a mile. Last 2 weeks have been a mile and a half. Is that it's kind of looking like some of the cars that traditionally would have finished 20th to 30th are going to be battling more for the 10 to 15 range. No. And if they're doing that, then when their price tag's super low, they may be a viable option. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Stuart Hosswoes, that's something that is going to be really interesting this week at a track that Harvick, especially all-time winningest driver at Phoenix in Cup cars, possibly just in cars, period. But Amarola's ran really well here as well. And so it's going to be interesting to see if the way that they ran last week is continues over, or if that was just kind of a freak thing. I'm probably still going to roster them a lot. You'll see as we get later on. I have my driver distribution. I still have a lot of especially Amarola. I have a decent amount of Harvick. Harvick's just kind of expensive. He's starting back in 18th, so he's got some position differential, but he worries me a little bit. If he runs like he did last week, he's going to be a 10 to 15th place car, and
because he started out front last week and never did anything,
he just went
right?
straight backwards. Kind of exactly like Chris Bell did 2 weeks ago, right?
But then we saw Bell do well last week.
Yeah, exactly. So, sometimes you just miss the track, but nonetheless, and then we're rounding out with Hendrick's dominance. It seems like they're just going to be really good every week. And we'll talk about it later. I'm trying to find them into more rosters than I already was. And I'm going to do that until they prove me otherwise. And based on my track record so far, they will prove me otherwise.
That will be this week.
This week. But yeah, so just kind of looking up and down. This was my last week roster. You may remember this is how many lineups I had people in. This is their percentage. This is Eric Almirola killing me by finishing so far back. I had him in 75% of rosters. So it was kind of one of those things where after he went out, I was really screwed just across the board. But, and
what happened with him?
Hit the wall.
Okay.
He's, I think he just got tied coming out of a corner or loose out of a corner.
Is that 2 weeks in a row that he hasn't finished?
It is.
Okay.
Maybe 3.
Okay,
that's
strong.
why he's starting way back there this week. I think it's 2 weeks in a row, actually. But yeah, he's starting like 33rd this week. So I'm throwing him in again. But nonetheless, you see, I had some Larson, but I didn't have enough Larson.
Yep.
And you see, he very much, top point getter, 98.4 points.
Yep.
You see a couple other guys, though. You see, like, Blaney. He was the guy that we talked about, and he ended up being, a good value.
Yep.
On top of just getting raw points. But, some of our guys that I put in a lot, Custer didn't perform very well. Chastain didn't run all that great. He ran okay. Chastain was the same way. So that's something to keep track of as we keep going, especially those new guys that are in new rides like Briscoe and Chastain, where, we see whether or not they continue to run around 20th, or if they, start pushing it upward to, getting more in 15 plus range. I think that's something to keep track of, but I threw this up here because I talked about it last week, and I felt like people should see that all of my picks went terrible.
How it went. So was Eric Jones one of our drivers in a new car? You're talking about the drivers in new cars to watch. Jones
he went from the Gibbs 20, which is Chris Bell's in now, to the 43 that Bubba Wallace was driving last year. And, Bubba, he was right around the top 20 guy, right around 20th place. We'll see. And that's another thing, right, is that it's hard to know whether or not, Eric Jones's performance last week is indicative of the rest of the season, or if it's just
one race.
He had a really good race, and he really did well at that track. So that's something to keep an eye on. I don't have any of him again this week, but he's starting higher. He's starting, I think, 10th or 11th this week, so pretty high.
Okay.
Let's see. He's starting 14th, so not terrible, but not doesn't have those position differential points that you would love to have. He's probably not a bad idea to have in general, but I'll talk about some people that I have instead later.
And one of the things I think you wanted to talk about this week was focusing a little less on that point differential, right?
Yeah. And we'll talk about it in a second when we get to the finish base aspect of it. If you've watched previous weeks, you'll remember this slide: scoring, lap base, finish base. So laps led, fastest lap. Those are your 2 lap base. Point differential, or position differential, and number of points is based on your finish. That's the finish base. The lap based aspect of it, you get 0.25 per lap led. There's 312 laps. A few more laps this week.
With only 1 mile track, that makes sense.
Yep, it is the Instacart 500, which it took me a while to figure out that was 500 kilometers.
Okay. I learned.
Yeah, I was very confused why they weren't running.
They didn't want to do the nice 312.
I think it has been the 312 in the past, and they changed their mind.
Okay, they want to be fancy.
But this is an interesting one because unlike the previous weeks where we've seen 1 or 2 drivers win every lead the most laps each race, that's been happening here. But also the same drivers have been doing that.
In 2020.
So Chase Elliott, last year, Chase, Logano, Keselowski, and then Harvick in the spring race some. But those main 3, Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski, and Joey Logano, in both races led at least a decent amount. Keselowski not as much in the fall race, Logano not as much in the spring race. Of course, Logano was pretty close in the spring race.
Yeah.
But that's something to keep an eye on. And I envision, based on how well the Hendrick and the Penske cars have ran so far this year, that's going to continue.
Okay.
I don't foresee it changing too much. It may be different drivers, but I anticipate it being similar teams. And then just again going hand in hand with that is your fastest lap award.
Our Ricky Bobby award.
Our Ricky Bobby award, yeah. Yeah, it's very similar in that those top three, at least for the fall race, the top three guys were the same ones.
Yep.
I think Denny finished fourth or something. He finished up there as well. Cole Custer's the only one that's kind of weird to jump out at, and I'm not sure 100% if he just happened to have a run where he had newer tires than everyone, or if he just had a random part of the race where he just ran really well. But I mean, the thing about fastest lap is it's always going to be the guys that lead laps for the most part.
Makes
I mean,
sense, yeah.
some may get more than others, but as a whole, if your gunner is leading laps, he's probably also going to get his fair share of fastest lap awards. So, and again, it's hard to predict that, but we do at least see a little bit of, common names at least between the the fastest lap and the laps led.
Yep.
And then finishing position, again, I want to focus more on this.
I think that's exactly right.
Because I've been very much on position differential. Guys, I think can do pretty well, but more on position differential. I don't care about position differential.
They're starting the back. Let's put them
in.
in.
Yeah. And I've not been picking bad cars. I've not been picking cars that I think are going to finish in the back. But I don't think that. I mean, especially looking at the way that the winning builds go week to week. There's going to be weeks where those guys, the way that I have been doing it, is going to probably be very fruitful and probably give you a good shot at winning.
Because it'll end up being the highest of the high scores.
But I think it's a little bit less. It's going to be less common, right? Because most of the time,
week to week, you may not need that absolute.
Week to week, most of the time, the guys that are starting in the top 10 are the ones that's probably going to finish in the top 10. And you're going to have a few guys that come up, but you need to be a little bit more. I need to be a little bit more selective in that. And so I'm trying to make sure to get at least two, I guess what you would call gunners, where or what we've been calling gunners, that I think have a, barring a wreck, have a really, really good shot of getting at least the top 5, if not better.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it.
I want guys that are, I'm definitely going to play, position differential guys if I think they could get into the top 10 and they're starting 20-somethings, right?
That's a good tiebreaker.
I'm definitely going to do that as well.
Focus.
Exactly. Especially when they end up coming in at similar pricing. And not only that, but you get, when you're looking at pricing, you get a lot of value by picking a guy that's starting 5th or 6th. And then you have a lot of downside, because if he doesn't finish 5th or 6th, you're going to get all those negative points. But, if he finishes 5th, yeah, you don't get the position differential points, but you are still going to get, I think it's
the
38
huge finishing points. Yeah.
And,
presumably let some laps in there.
Yeah, and exactly. So that's what I'm doing a little bit more. I'm doing kind of a combo this week, again, with the 20 entries that I normally do. I'm probably going to be doing, a good smattering of people that I think that have a good shot of running top 5 to top 10, and maybe not necessarily all of them, just being straight position differential plays. I do have a few that maybe aren't home run position differentials that I'll talk about, but that I do still like.
Good starting position and good upside.
Yeah,
I mean, I think
exactly.
That's the real sweet spot if you can find a handful of cars like that.
Yeah, and then exactly what I was saying for position differential, viewing it in tandem a little bit more is my goal for this week. On to Phoenix. Again,
Avondale, Arizona. 20 miles. All right.
Yeah, so we've got, it's 1 mile flat bank. Used to be actually.
What's a flat bank?
It's the bank. So the banking is like this.
As we come around the corners?
Yeah, so
okay.
it's not as inclined.
And that changes the driving?
Yeah. You're not going to sit as much in a corner, right?
So different cars do well, different drivers, I guess, do well with this type of skill set? Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. And so, it'll be interesting. We'll see. It was the season finale last year.
Okay.
And in the season finale, all 4 teams that were in the season finale for the championship finished in the top 4.
Wow.
And so, so they all did really well. And so it'll be interesting to see how that translates, whether or not it's a similar thing. Chase Elliott obviously won because he won the championship.
Okay.
And then, but yeah, so it's interesting. My favorite thing about this track is that The now front stretch, you can see the start finish line right here,
Yep.
represented by the checker. It used to be the back stretch. It
Okay.
used to just be a dog leg on the back stretch. Now they've changed it.
How long has that change been in place?
2 years?
Okay.
Couple
So
years.
our 2020 data is still on this new track.
Yeah, I mean, it was the same track. They just went a different way.
Okay.
But nonetheless, yeah, so it's cool. And then going into my selection strategy, this is kind of what I was talking about my changes. I want to get more for sure drivers. I definitely want some rosters that are, a little bit more speculative. But I definitely need. I've been seeing too many rosters win that are safer.
That makes sense.
And so that's kind of my goal. And then beyond that, when I look at my lower guys, I don't want anyone that I don't think is going to finish below like 15 to 20th.
I think we saw that in the finishing roster last week. I think everyone was in there in the winning roster was in the top 15. They had 2 good point differential scores, but most of their points did come from that laps led, fastest lap, and finishing position.
Yeah, exactly. So those are just my changes. I'm going to have, in the past, as you can see by the second bullet, I've had 1 gunner. This one, I think I'm probably going to try a more traditional 2 gunner.
Okay.
And maybe not even a straight gunner so much as a higher, just more dependent on the finishing position.
Yeah.
Just I'm going to care more about finishing position this week than I have in the past, or where I think they're going to finish.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense.
We'll go from there. So, again, we were talking about parity.
Yep.
The 10th place to 30th place battle is something that I think is going to be an interesting fantasy opportunity and probably downfall for a lot of us.
The bane of your existence?
Because we're seeing a lot of cars that have, traditionally not ran top 15, be able to run top 15.
So, for example, which ones are these ones you have bulleted here?
Yeah, Eric Jones is a great example. The 43 car was, they maybe one off every once in a while, but they weren't, regularly a top 15 team last year. Michael McDowell as well. He finished 17th, but if you're looking at him, I'm not sure I'm rostering him again starting 16th, but he's probably a guy that's going to finish between 10th and 20th most of the year, based on his first few weeks. And he had a top 10 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
So it's definitely something where, and then you see Stenthouse who finished 11th. He's actually somebody that's really interesting this week because he is cheap. He's $5,500. He's starting 11th, so he doesn't have position differential upside. But if you think he can finish, top 15 for $5,500, he's probably paying for himself.
Yeah, I don't believe those numbers. If he finished at his starting position, he almost.
100%.
Does he have top 10 upside, or is he really a 10 to 20 car at best?
We'll see how the that car runs, but probably more of a 10 to 15 type guy, or type car.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing. I have him in a couple rosters because he's so cheap.
Just let you do other things.
That I think he's really a guy that I think if I can get three gunners or 3
high end
$10,000 plus guys.
Yeah.
And I have him there. I think you have a good shot of doing really well, especially if he can repeat that performance and finish in the top 11, 12. And like I said, even 15th, right? It's only going to be, it would still be 30 points, depending on the day.
So I like your top targets here. What if we start a roster with Newman, Chastain, Suarez? That's got to give you pretty good. Yeah, that's got to give you a ton of money to spend.
100%. Yeah.
Do those guys have, decent upside?
So these are guys that I've marked that I really like that I'm playing. Newman is somebody who is.
We liked last week.
I basically always like Newman, and even in 19th, he doesn't have as much upside as he did a couple weeks ago when we rostered him and we were 100% right.
It's starting the low 20 or the 20th range.
but I think he finished like 9th or 10th, or maybe better than that. But I think could 100% be a 10 to 15 car, and it's $6,700 and starting 19th. I don't envision him, barring problems, finishing lower than 19th. Okay. So I don't envision him being a loss on the position differential side. Obviously he could, but I don't foresee it happening. And so he has some upside there.
Top 5 finish type.
We'll see. I probably wouldn't think so. I would think probably around 10th would be the ceiling there, but I would never count out Ryan Newman.
Cool.
Ross Chastain's somebody that's interesting to me because he hasn't ran overly great the past couple weeks, but again, new car. He's at the 42 at Ganassi now, and so he's a guy that I keep marking because I think that, and Briscoe's the same way. Briscoe's a little bit more expensive, I believe. I don't have him on this one. I have him later. Okay. But I think he's, going to continue to progress to be a consistently top 15, if not better, car. And it's just kind of a when it's going to happen type thing.
And on those guys, if you are confident in them, you want to be early because once they start showing that form, the ownership will just go through the roof. So you want to be on the week he explodes. So.
Yeah, exactly. And then Suarez is somebody who's starting 27th. I think he could 100% find his way in the top 20, if not better.
Okay.
He maybe not be as high of an upside guy, just because I don't know how. I've been impressed by the Trackhouse car. This new team.
Okay.
So I've been impressed by how
not the Michael
well
Jordan team though, right?
No.
Okay.
This is the Pitbull team.
Okay. Oh, the Pitbull. I love this.
I've been impressed by how well they performed. And Daniel Suarez has driven really, really well. But I don't think we have enough data points to really know what their consistent upside is versus I think they had a 15th earlier in the year. And I think he could perform really, really well. But at 5,900 and starting 27th, he's a guy that I still have quite a bit of because, I think he can easily get to the top 20, and pay for his
low price
tag. Exactly. And so that's basically what I said in the rookies' verdicts. I'm intrigued by Stenhouse still. He's $5,500. I still have him in some. He worries the bejesus out of me starting 11.
With that high starting position,
But I don't know. We'll talk about it a little bit later. I don't actually remember how many rosters I have him in. It's not a ton, but out of 20, I want to say it's 4.
Yeah, seems reasonable.
But favorites to win.
All right, let's talk about our gunners.
You've seen very similar people every week. This is going to be, and it is every week is going to be very similar.
That makes sense.
But the thing that I'm interested by, Chase Elliott, favorite, and I have a lot of Chase Elliott. He's very expensive. He's starting 6th, so he's a little bit of position differential upside.
And just win upside.
But mostly just win upside.
Yep.
And so
you said he won here to finish out the season last year, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we saw he led a bunch of laps both races last year. How's
he been doing so far this season?
Pretty well, right?
Finishing in the
he ran really well last week, and then he won the first and second stage.
Okay.
And then he kind of fell off a little bit, but he had he got damaged during a pit stop and had a bunch of different weird stuff happen.
Okay.
But and again, the Hendrick cards have been so good that the fact that there's already been 2 Hendrick winners and one of them that isn't Chase Elliott yet is
bound to happen.
Something to note.
So is he your favorite to this week? You think?
I have a lot of them. Yes.
Okay. I guess we'll see your ownership here in a minute to see.
Yeah. Exactly. And then Hamlin, who I don't have a lot of, who
starting 3rd. He's not overly priced up.
He's not bad priced. I don't have strong feelings about him. I actually know exactly why. I found Larson a lot more than I found him, and they're pretty similar situated as far as 2nd, 3rd,
and the similar price tag. Yep.
I like Larson a lot again. Harvick.
We've seen Larson look great the last 2 weeks.
He's looked very, very good, and they're it's kind of one of those things where at some point he might have new team growing pains, but the way he's performed the first, the last 2 weeks, that maybe those just don't happen, and he just continues to perform. It's almost one of those things where you just kind of have to keep putting him in there until he proves you wrong. And Byron's a very similar situation. He didn't run as well, but he ran really, really well last week. And I was really impressed by him. And again, Bowman is going to be another guy that I talked about on the Hendrick train. Somebody that ran top 10 all last week and blew a tire or had a tire go down late, and that's the only reason why he's starting so low this week. But he gives you at 8,700, he gives you a little bit more position differential side, but also, that very much could get into the top 5, top 10. A couple years ago, he dominated the race. I think he ended up finishing 4th, but he led a bunch of laps, so he's led laps here.
He seems like one of the highest upside guys then. If he truly has that top 5 upside potential, starting back at 21. I mean, this seems like our Blaney play from a couple weeks ago where it was stick him in and go.
I think it's very similar. The one intriguing one is Harvick, which we talked about earlier, whether or not Stewart Haas.
Well, there's something wrong with
whether or not they're just not gonna be as on this year. Harvick basically dominated 3/4 of the season last year, up until the chase, and then he just and even some of the chase, and then he missed out on the finals, but I don't know. It worries me. I definitely have some of them because I think, there's and you can see by the fact that he's a favorite, there's a
Vegas still likes
good
him.
shot that he runs through the pack and he gets you 17 point differential points, 45 first place points,
and leads
plus
100
however
laps.
many laps he leads.
And you just absolutely have to have him in your roster.
And you have to have him in your roster. So I have him, not as much as I probably should. Also, he's really expensive, though.
Yeah, 11.9. Jeez Louise.
He's only a little bit more expensive than Chase. That's an interesting thing, but he's very expensive. And
yeah.
I
don't know that I'll be getting to that price tag at all this
I
year.
think you have to find. I think you have to pick. You don't have to pick, but you can't really have both Chase and Harvick in a roster.
No, you'd be down to nothing left to spend.
Yeah. But I do have a few all Hendrick lineup with some bottom of the barrel guys.
All right. And just hope the Hendrick cars just come out and crush.
Yeah. But just moving on to similar to last week, this is your how well they've done at Phoenix since 2018, and based on your position differential of where you're starting.
Kind of the projected top 5.
Exactly. And I added the average finish on this because, again, I want to be more cognizant of where people are finishing and where their average finish is. And so you look at somebody like Eric Almirola, who, again, has had a rough couple weeks, but he's had car issues. And the only problem was that last week he wasn't looking very good before the car issues. But that being said, you starting 32nd, only $9,000. I have him a lot still. I think I probably have him in 8 rosters, and I had to make myself not put him in more.
I'll probably end up with him a fair amount as well then.
And Harvick, there's Harvick popping off again. Kyle Busch is somebody who has won 2 or 3 races here over the past since 2018.
Okay.
And is a guy that can definitely pop up there. Ended up running well last week. Newman is somebody who, again, that I talked about, his average finish isn't as high, 15th.
Yep.
But when you think about an average finish of 15th, you got,
he started 19th, so average finish of 15th is fine,
if you can get up to 15,
and he's cheap.
And, maybe he gets up to 12th, 13th, or even around 10th, which 100% Newman could any day.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He gets there for you. And then, again, Larson, who I talked about a minute ago, I have a lot of. Average finish 7th. Starting 2nd, so a little bit worrisome there. But I think he's a guy that can absolutely finish top 5, and it won't matter.
Crush.
Yeah.
Cool.
He might lose a point or two if he finishes 5th. Right. But he's somebody that I definitely have a lot of. And then value based.
Okay.
Again, I wanted to kind of include their average finish here so that we get a little bit more information on it. So you see Suarez down there at the bottom, average finish 22nd. But at $5,900. His average per point is dollar per point is
he
pretty
still pays
small.
himself off, or has the potential to pay himself
exactly.
off.
So Custer is again just going into the Stewart Haas again. We could every slide could say, is Stewart Haas going to run well this week? Because I definitely have at least one Stewart Haas lineup where like it's just
in case.
Because I think the thing is that if they run well, all of them have good position differential. Because it's like because Briscoe's starting like 23rd, Custer's starting 24th, Harvick's starting 18th, Amarola's starting 32nd. Like all four of them are like starting back there, and if they can like get anywhere close to, I mean, if they have pretty good cars, like Harvick will finish top 10.
Okay.
And then if they have really good cars, like probably Harvick and Amarola will finish top 10, closer to top 5, and then you'll see Custer and Briscoe hopefully get closer up to the top 10 area.
If Amarola finds himself in the top 5, he's going to be a must own.
Yeah, and I have a bunch of them, but again, I had 15 of them last week, and I got burned. So
and all 15 went in the garbage can.
Oh yeah, I did. I think I would have. I mean, I placed in some stuff.
Even
just
with
like
the crash,
straight cash.
Okay.
Yeah, but I would have done a lot better if I had him. And then looking at the mile track, so that's going to be run through them. New Hampshire, Dover, here. There's one or two other ones, but since 2018, these are your guys that have would produce the top points if they finish how they normally do. Interesting. The thing that jumped out at me was Cole Custer with an average finish of 13th.
Yeah, wow.
So again, if he's a guy
he's starting in the back,
if he can hit that average finish,
and he's in one of the Haas cars we've been talking about,
again,
right?
yeah, he's in one of the Stewart Haas cars. And so it's a little bit worrisome, but you see the Stewart Haas cars; they're the top 3
in value and finish,
and so it's definitely interesting. And then you see Truex, who I don't have a lot of again.
Yep.
I've not had a lot of yet, and he's ran really well, and so he's not necessarily. I've not necessarily been killed because I haven't had him, because he hasn't really had one of those races where he just like sits in the front and wins.
He hasn't been our gunner yet.
But he's finished top 5 like every race, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Something crazy.
And he helped me win or finish second the week that I 2 weeks ago when I did well. He was in my lineup.
So he's definitely a guy to keep an eye on. And I think I have a couple rosters with him this week as opposed to the previous weeks. I have a couple Toyota rosters where, Truex and Busch and maybe Denny Hamlin, where, if I can get, if the Toyotas end up kind of being a little bit more dominating. But I mean, so far it's really been Hendrick Penske. So
I like the idea of a Haas comeback tour week that they figure something out during the week and just come out and put on.
And I think it'll be interesting too on ownership, because I think it kind of goes both ways. I think there's going to be people like us that are like, oh, there's a lot of value there.
Yeah.
And we see how they've done in the past. There's a lot of value there. I'm going to just go with that was, a blink of just, and performance.
Yep.
Versus an actual, legitimate problem. And, we'll see. I mean, I think that's all part of it, right? Is that
it's been our big question on every slide.
Yeah, it's every single one. But one interesting thing is guys that have top 10 average finishes: Harvick, Truex, Hamlin, Kyle Busch, and Larson.
Okay.
So those may be guys that you target in on a little bit on for like gunners or that type of thing.
Yep.
I have a lot of Larson. I don't have a ton of the other guys, but I have.
Besides Larson, who else is your favorite on that list?
I like Kyle Busch a lot still. I don't know. I struggle here because I think Harvick, because of starting at 18.
Okay.
Because he's so expensive, but he doesn't have to win and he doesn't have to dominate to pay for himself. If he can finish top 5, or if he can finish 5th, and he doesn't even have to lead laps, like he probably pays for himself.
Just the point differential and the finishing position.
Not, but
I would say he's got a big tag.
He's got a big tag, but and then moving on to value, same people, right? Like that would be Harvick's points if he just finished fourth.
Yep.
And
and that doesn't even count any leading laps.
Yeah, exactly. And that would be last week I mean, Larson was insane at $95 per average point, but 220 would have been not bad. It would have been. It would have been a good. Lineup. It would have been either in a winning line. It would have been in a good lineup. I'm not sure it would have been in the optimal lineup, but it would have been in a good lineup. And that's without any leading laps or fastest laps. Which if Harvick's finishing fourth, he's probably going to get.
If he's coming up from 19 or whatever, he's got to.
But anyways, it's the same. It's the same top 5 as at Phoenix, which was interesting to me.
Oh really?
And so it's different order.
Or as Vegas, you mean?
No, it's Phoenix. No, we were talking about
1 mile tracks versus Phoenix were the same. So Phoenix is representative of a traditional 1 mile.
Harvick, Newman.
Okay.
Little different order, but people I also like that were also around top 10 value: Bowman, Reddick, Bubba. So Bubba is interesting to me. They've had all kinds of issues. Last week what was it that they said? They broke something in the steering column or something? I don't know.
Great.
Something broke, like the or it might have been the motor. I don't know. They said whatever it was broke.
Did he finish?
They had to fix it. Yeah, he finished 5 or 6 laps down.
Okay.
He was way back there. But that being said, he's actually ran well here previously.
Okay.
See, his average finish is it's not on
in his prior car.
In when he drove the 43. And so, if this is something that can carry over, that'll be interesting, to see if, his average finish is 22nd, so not amazing, but it was in substantially not as good equipment.
Yeah.
So, if you extrapolate that over and you think that, this is the week where Bubba, starts to show that improvement, he's definitely somebody that I have some of, not a ton of.
Okay.
7,200 still... It's not that he's expensive. It's just that I'd rather have Ross Chastain at 6,900.
That makes sense.
And I'd rather have Chase Briscoe, who is not on any of these slides because he hasn't ran at any mile tracks yet because he's a rookie.
What about when he was in Infinity? How did he do in Infinity races?
I'm sure he did great because that's what he always did. But let me look real quick.
How he ended up in Cup?
He won 9 races last year. Is insane. He'll be interesting because he's not super expensive, but he's starting, right there. Let's see, Xfinity. He finished 9th.
9th at Phoenix.
They were in the spring race there too. 9th and 6th. So.
9th and 6th. Okay, I mean not terrible.
He's not as good as winning like he did last week when we were talking about. Yeah. He'd won the last 2 or 3 or something stupid like that.
Yeah, you can see that one right there in second before.
Yeah, and so no, but I mean I think that's the interesting thing is that I think when it comes to Bubba versus that's kind of one of the either or type
trade-offs,
things.
Yep.
It's like a Bubba or Chastain or Briscoe, with all 3 of them being in new rides where you don't have as much information to go from. I don't know. I tend to pick Briscoe and Chastain, but that's probably going to end up biting me because I do think that eventually that Bubba's car will be a little bit better than at least the Ganassi car. But I don't know. We'll see. They haven't been so far. And it's just something that you have to figure out.
Yeah, exactly.
So moving on to my gunner pool. So this is just the people that I would feel comfortable betting on or putting in. As you'll see later, it's not necessarily all the people that I didn't necessarily put all of these people in. But that's their price tag on the right or they're starting in the middle. That is not correct on the starting though, because Logano is starting 9th. So the starting in the middle is probably all messed up. Yeah,
who do you like the best
all
there?
of that's wrong. Harvick starting. Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson.
Kyle Larson. Okay.
I'm pumping a lot. Also pumping a lot of Keselowski and Logano.
Okay.
And I'm trying to get more Blaney in there.
I want to be a Logano fan. If I was going to be a fan of a driver, I think Logano might be. I don't know. He seems like he's like a fairly young guy. He seems pretty nice. Didn't he drive the Home Depot car previously?
He did?
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to cheer for Logano.
There we go.
That's going to be my driver.
There you go. I mean, it's not a bad choice. He's very good. But yeah, I have a lot of that.
Larson's one that won last week, but he was one that got suspended.
Yeah.
So we probably can't cheer for him.
Yeah, you can cheer for him. But
it's a good rehab story.
No, I think, a lot of these guys are going to do really, really well. I would, if I was a betting man, I would say that the winner comes from this group.
That makes sense.
And then
I think Vegas agrees with that assessment.
Yeah, right. Like it's most of those guys. I was trying to think about whether or not I kicked anybody off of this list that I kept a lot on because I tried to keep a little bit more on my list and then maybe just not input them into my lineup.
Yeah,
versus
that makes sense.
Previous weeks where I just kicked them off and then they've killed me. But 7 and 9. I think there's a lot of really good values here. The starting in the middle is correct. The starting in the middle is correct on this slide. Amarola starting 32nd, $9,000, so kind of expensive, but I mean a lot of value, especially if you think he's going to get that top 10 plus upside.
Yep.
DiBenedetto is another one that we've talked about basically every week. He's up to starting 20th instead of 30th, instead of 38th. But he's still a guy that with the Wood Brothers car is a Penske affiliated car. And if I'm pumping Penske cars, it's hard not to also pump a similar Penske car that's starting 20th.
Yep. With a good driver, I mean, right?
Yeah, no, I like. Matt DiBenedetto has shown time and time again that he probably deserves an even better ride than he has. And so going down further, William Byron is somebody that I have a lot of this week because I think he's a guy that could very well end up being more of a gunner than
and he seems underpriced if he ends up being a gunner, right?
Exactly.
At $8,300, he's way cheap.
And starting 10th, I was a little bit weary of him last week when he started second. But starting 10th, I mean, he's got a little bit of upside, but also he doesn't have that downside of starting second.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm trying to be a little bit more weary. Trying to figure out how to balance the upside versus the downside. Because I saw it with Amarola last week, started 26th, finished 36th, or was it 28th, 30th? Anyways, pretty far back there.
Bell, who started 3rd and finished 5th, and he ended up in the winning lineup.
Yeah, exactly. So being able to pick the guy that's going to finish not a lot worse than where he started is going to be big.
As long as it's still up top, yeah.
Bell is somebody who's interesting to me. And 4th.
Starting 4.
I didn't find him a ton.
Okay.
But he's somebody who probably could be in an optimal lineup because if he runs like he did last week, which I really think he can, you're getting a really, really good Gibbs car for $8,100.
Yep.
Even if he's starting 4th, he's a top 5 car, so it's good value.
That's how we saw him finish last week, yeah.
Exactly. And so, your only fear is that he does what he did last time when he started, it was supposed to be 3rd, but then Hamlin went to the back, so he started 1st, or on the front row, where he just went backwards and ran in the middle all day. And you hope that doesn't happen, but I don't know. Reddick is somebody that I'm pretty big on this week. He doesn't jump off on any of the the
1 mile
statistics
metrics
and that type of thing, but he's a guy that.
What's his 1 mile history like?
That's a beautiful question. That's what I was looking at right now. If I could find the number 8.
Because I remember, he was a guy that in a lot of our stat models had just jumped off the page in the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, his average finish is 19th.
Okay, so not terrible.
Not terrible. Obviously could be better. But that being said, he was a rookie last year.
Yeah.
And so he's a guy that, and I think the RCR cars have shown that they're better this year versus, really the end of last year to this year, they've been really, really strong. And I think that, very, very much could be, for Reddick, I would put his ceiling at 5 to 10, but I think his floor is pretty high as well.
Okay.
I don't envision him finishing outside the top 20. I don't really envision him finishing outside the top 15.
So he still represents some good value at that price tag.
And it's $7,900. Kurt Busch is an interesting one because I just don't know. At starting 12th, I had him in some rosters, and then I ended up switching him out in every roster for Austin Dillon starting 13th. And I don't know. You could probably go pros and cons between those two for a while. Chase Briscoe at $7,500, starting 26th. definitely some upside, but again, the whole Stewart-Haas thing.
Yep.
And then Bubba, exactly what we talked about before, starting 25th. So he definitely has upside. I mean, I think this is a week where you want to have Bubba more than you definitely have the previous 2 weeks, even knowing that he hasn't performed as well. But he also hasn't had the car, the chance to do it. Similar to like Briscoe, like when week 1 not our week 1, so when they were at Homestead, when he got caught behind the 8 ball and got a couple laps down because he speed on pit road or something like that, and whatever he did. Maybe he had a vibration and then he sped on pit road. I don't know what he did. Anyways, but he got a couple laps down early and like basically for 3/4 of the race he was just trying to get back in it, and that so it's hard to take from that what to do there. But nonetheless, like I said, really like Byron, really like Bowman, really like Reddick. One thing about Byron that I wanted to note was that he didn't finish as well in the fall race. I don't remember where he finished off the top of my head, but he was, with 10% of the race left, he was running top 5.
Okay, so something caused him to fall.
So he had a little bit of fall off towards the end, which was a common thing, and apparently has been another common theme for Bowman so far, because last week he had a bad tire, had his tire go down as well. So I don't know.
That's just bad luck.
I put Will Amarola burn me again. I'm ready to be hurt again. And then sub $7,000 guys. I don't have all of these, but I have a decent chunk of them. I have more this week than previous.
Okay.
So Chastain, Custer, Newman, we've already talked about.
Yep.
Busher, again, he's a guy that in 17, he doesn't have. Last week we talked about him a little bit because he was starting pretty high, but he finished 14th, I believe. And so he's a guy that has finished, consistently in the top, 10 to 20. And, a couple weeks ago, he led for a good portion of it.
Surprising start out the
And
series.
so, a guy at 17, maybe he's a little bit more, he might be an attractive option in this range. Corey LaJoy is somebody who I keep having, and I really like Corey LaJoy. That team so far has been having a lot of DNFs, though. They have been having mechanical issues. They've been having a bunch of different things. So it scares me a little bit to be.
That's risky to roster someone that may not finish.
But that being said, I think he's a guy. He also, I don't know how high, and again, because he's with a new team and they haven't really had a track record yet. I don't know if he's more than a top 25, like around 25th person. And starting 33rd, he's still not going to be as attractive as some of these other guys.
That finishing position points won't be there, yeah.
Suarez, I've already talked about. Alfredo, I feel very similar to Suarez. I don't have him as much.
Similar starting position, similar price, similar driver, or similar car at least?
So Alfredo's the teammate to Michael McDowell.
Okay.
And I think Alfredo's a good driver. He's, again, a rookie in Cup. But he's a guy that I think could very well finish closer to around 20th. I think Suarez might have a little bit more upside, but it could just be because I'm a little bit more comfortable with a little bit more of a veteran driver.
Okay.
But beyond that, speaking of that, Priest is the perfect example of that, where he's a second-year guy where I'm just not confident in him at 15th.
And he was in the winning lineup last week.
Cheap that I still have him there. I would take Stenhouse even starting 11th, though. I think that's where I ended up coming down. Yeah. Okay. And their teammate cars, I believe. Yeah, they are for JTG Hardy. But I just when I'm picking a lower priced guy, I want to feel a little bit more confident that it's not going to be something out of the control that's going to end up happening.
Okay.
But I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I just, that's something I'm hopping around on a lot, is on these
lower price
guys, on which ones.
Yeah.
But moving to a driver.
So this is what you actually own, right?
This is what I actually have, yes. We made this today. So if you see at the bottom, Kurt Busch, Corey LaJoy, Ryan Priest didn't make any of my rosters. But that doesn't mean they can't make yours. But I'm really heavy on Byron, Newman, Amarola, Chastain, Bowman.
Yep.
But, I mean, it's kind of an even pattern. I'm trying to be a little bit better about not having 15 Eric Almirola rosters. I still have 9. But
it's a week-by-week process.
It's a week-by-week process. But
I like your lineup breakdown.
So it definitely got a lot cleaner this week as opposed to last week where, some of them were crazy amounts, some of them were down. So I've tried to be a little bit more cognizant of how many people I have in each roster. I tried to build a lot more rosters that weren't strictly overlapping because I've definitely had some bad luck in, I've had 1 or 2 rosters with somebody who's done really well, like week 1 when I had Byron in like 4 or 5, probably 3 or 4 rosters. But every one of my Byron rosters had either DiBenedetto or Almirola in them, and or maybe just Almirola, but one of those two.
And they tanked all your good.
And they had issues, and it was bad, right?
Yep.
And so, that's something that I'm trying. But, I mean, you still see that I have a lot of the people that I like.
And I think you should, right? I mean, only building 20 lineups, I think you need to have a lot of variations of the guys you like in order to give yourself a chance to smash when your guys do well. Yep.
That's the goal. I was trying to see if anything really jumped out at me on this. I tried to have I have Logano and Keselowski 5 and 4.
Yep.
I tried to. I have at least a couple of them where I group them together,
okay.
And then I have a couple where I group the Hendrick guys together in various different ways. I have one that is just Hendrick. Let me see who's actually in that one. This is my secret of the week.
Team Hendrick.
It is. Let's see. Is this one in? Suarez. I had Suarez and Alfredo in it though, and I could have replaced either one of them with Stenhouse or Priest if I'd wanted to.
I like
it's
that
not terrible. I mean, it's not great, but it's not bad.
If Suarez and Alfredo do well, I mean, you just crush.
Yeah, exactly. So if they finish, and the thing is if all the Hendrick cars run top 5, top 10, and Suarez and Alfredo finish 20th.
They just do their part, yeah.
Then it's going to do pretty well.
Then we're going to be talking about the Ricky Parker celebration show.
That's the dream. But nonetheless, I think that's kind of where I'm at this week. I don't know if you have any insights for what you're thinking.
Yet this week. I'll definitely be building some probably Sunday morning, but I will be trying to, like you said, spread out my ownership a little bit and trying to avoid the clumps of guys that I think I clumped together too much last week. And then just kind of mixing and matching because I'm going to take your advice that there's more parity than we have seen in years past.
It's okay. It'll be no parity.
It'll just be all the good drivers will do well.
They'll finish the position that they started.
But yeah, I'll kind of be playing that trend and seeing if I can't maybe mix it up a little bit more and get a lucky roster.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And everyone, make sure you comment below, tweet at us. I also have some Xfinity rosters. I'm also doing 20 entries there.
Oh, cool.
I haven't done as much in-depth analysis, but I really like there. I really like Ty Gibbs. I really like Ryan Sieg. He's starting pretty low. There's a lot of value there because there's a lot of guys that are in starting around 10th that are $8,000.
Any of our guys that are racing in the main race racing for Xfinity as well?
I don't think anyone is running the Xfinity race this weekend.
Because wasn't Reddick doing both for a little while?
He's
not doing this week.
The last 2 weeks he has been.
Isn't there a cap? You said you can only do so many Xfinity races.
You can run 5.
You can run 5. Okay. See, I'm learning NASCAR. I'm gonna be a fan by the end of the season, not just for DFS purposes. I'm also gonna petition them to make these races 60 laps. So you guys let me know.
I'm telling them to come to a short track.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
But yeah, thanks to everyone that's watching. Make sure to let us know how we can get better.
Yes, we definitely want to improve.
And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.